The bells of St. Paul's Cathedral echoed through the crisp air. Linda lifted the hem of her white wedding dress as she climbed the church steps one at a time. Although it was March, Minnesota's winter chill lingered, and her cheeks were flushed from the cold. "You're marrying my son in such a cheap dress." The voice belonged to Michael's mother, Barbara. Dressed in a navy blue gown from a high-end boutique, she looked Linda up and down as if appraising merchandise. Linda endured the scrutiny in silence. True, her dress was modest. As a nurse, she had purchased an off-the-rack gown with her savings, clearly not up to Barbara's standards. The ceremony began, and vows were exchanged in a solemn atmosphere. However, during the photo session afterward, Barbara's true colors emerged once again. During the family photos, she deliberately pushed Linda to the edge and even instructed the photographer to take just family shots without Linda in several pictures. Michael must have noticed. But he never confronted his mother about her behavior. "That's just Mom's way of showing she cares," he would always say, brushing it off. 3 years later, Linda began adoption proceedings. It was a decision made after struggling with infertility. Meeting 5-year-old Amy at the orphanage where she volunteered felt like destiny. However, she hadn't anticipated how this decision would further strain her relationship with Barbara. A child with no blood ties. From the moment Amy became part of the family, Barbara began spreading such comments. She didn't even show up at Regent's Hospital for the birth announcement. Instead, she sent a cold message. "Use Grace as her middle name." It was my mother's name. It was a one-sided demand. But when Michael said, "Please consider Mom's feelings," Linda swallowed her tears and agreed. That was their first major compromise. Barbara's hostility continued. She would deliberately schedule Amy's birthday celebration a week off, remove photos of the two from family albums, and deliberately ignore them at church coffee hours. The phrase, "real family," was repeated like a curse. The situation changed dramatically after Michael's sister Caitlin divorced. Barbara lavished protection on her when she returned home with her daughter Sophia. Her doting on Sophia, in particular, was excessive. "Look, Sophia. Grandmother bought you a lovely doll. Your artistic talent is wonderful. You're truly my granddaughter." While such conversations became routine, her attitude toward Amy grew increasingly cold. The difference in treatment between the two girls of similar age was painfully obvious. That Christmas, Barbara had planned an extravagant party. Her house in the Summit Hill District's upscale neighborhood was already decorated with LED lights and a massive Christmas tree. The invitation read, "Let's celebrate Christmas as a whole family." Christmas morning dawned in a winter wonderland. Amy stood by the window, breathing onto her small palms as she watched the falling snow. Wearing her new red North Face coat, her eyes sparkled with anticipation. "Grandmother's house will have wonderful presents, right?" Though Linda felt a pang in her heart at her daughter's profile, she nodded brightly. The night before, she had made careful preparations. She had curled Amy's hair meticulously and tied it with her favorite ribbon. The dress was navy velvet, worn for Sunday church services. A pearl brooch added an elegant touch. "Here, Amy. This brooch belonged to my mother. I want you to wear it today." When they arrived at Barbara's house, the aroma of turkey and apple pie greeted them at the entrance. The white mansion in the historic Summit Hill district looked like it had stepped out of a Christmas card. In the living room, a towering pine tree decorated with crystal ornaments cast a warm LED glow. Family photos were arranged chronologically above the fireplace: wedding pictures, Sophia's birthday, last month's Thanksgiving. Linda and Amy were absent from all of them. "I hope I haven't kept everyone waiting." Barbara appeared, wrapped in a scarlet cashmere sweater, wearing an artificial smile. A pearl necklace adorned her neck, a Cartier watch on her wrist. As always, she was impeccably dressed. The entire family gathered in the living room, settling into sofas and armchairs. Michael's father George remained buried in his newspaper as usual. Sister Caitlin couldn't put down her smartphone. Sophia, dressed in a white lace dress, wore a bored expression. Other relatives seemed to sense the uncomfortable atmosphere. When Amy tried to sit next to Sophia, Barbara moved quickly. "Sophia, come sit on grandmother's lap," she said, pulling Sophia close. Amy ended up alone at the edge of the large sofa. The fireplace flames flickered as the scent of green bean casserole wafted from the kitchen. Under the Christmas tree lay a mountain of presents wrapped in colorful paper. At first glance, it was the perfect family Christmas scene. "Well then, let's start exchanging presents." Barbara began pulling out luxuriously wrapped boxes. A large box adorned with gold and red ribbons was, of course, for Sophia. "Open it, my angel," Barbara's voice rang out as Sophia excitedly tore into the wrapping paper. Inside was a dress from a Parisian brand. Deep crimson velvet with delicate gold embroidery. "Oh, how lovely! You can wear this to Christmas Mass too," Barbara exclaimed while Caitlin's face showed discomfort. The overly expensive gift probably made her uncomfortable. It was also a symbol of Barbara's control. Then came Amy's turn. Barbara carelessly handed over a brown paper bag. The gesture was like passing trash, and the room's atmosphere momentarily froze. When Amy, her heart full of expectation, opened the bag, she found worn-out clothes inside. The hem was frayed, and there were small holes in the sleeves. They were clearly old clothes someone had meant to throw away. "Grandmother, why?" Amy's voice trembled. The brooch inherited from Linda's mother caught the fireplace light, gleaming sadly. "You should be grateful for what you get." Barbara's voice dripped with coldness. Her eyes gleamed as if assured of victory. "What is the meaning of this?" Linda's voice was quiet but shaking with anger. Her hands gripped the sofa's armrest tightly. "Well, you're not real family, so this is only natural." Those words tore through the room's atmosphere. Large tears fell from Amy's eyes. Michael's face contorted with anger. Yet no words came from his mouth. Years of filial obedience still bound him, even at this moment. Linda slowly stood up. Taking Amy's cold hand gently, she quietly said, let's go home." Before heading to the door, Linda left Michael with brief words. "From now on, all financial support to your parents will stop." Those words carried the weight of 10 years of patience and all the pain leading up to this moment. The sound of the heavy door closing broke the silence. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Footprints were quickly buried in fresh snow, symbolizing the permanent severing of ties with this family. Back home, Linda held Amy for a long time. In the heated room, the girl's body gradually regained its warmth. "Mom, was I a bad girl?" At this question, Linda's heart shattered into pieces. She must have held her daughter there for at least an hour. The St. Paul Community Group's Facebook page had thousands of members. Linda took a deep breath and began posting. "Today, we experienced something heartbreaking." The text matter-of-factly described the events: the Christmas party incident, ongoing discrimination, and final parting. She attached photos: the torn clothes Amy received and the luxury dress given to Sophia. It concluded with the line, "This is happening within the same family." Within 10 minutes, comments flooded in. The reaction from church members was particularly strong. Sunday school teachers knew Amy's innocent smile well. Church members who had felt uncomfortable with Barbara's domineering attitude also sent messages of support one after another. Linda's phone began ringing an hour after the post. The caller ID showed Barbara. When she ignored the call, a message quickly arrived. "Delete that post immediately. You're damaging our reputation. This is defamation. I won't hesitate to take legal action. This will cause trouble for Michael too." However, the situation had already spiraled beyond Barbara's control. The post was quickly shared and spread to other community groups in the area. The next morning, a local newspaper journalist requested an interview. They wanted to write an article titled "Discrimination at Christmas." Linda politely declined. "This is our family matter. I don't intend to resolve it through the media." But Barbara's anxiety only grew. She desperately tried to contain the situation. "It's all a misunderstanding. I think of Amy as my own grandchild. Those clothes may be old, but they were precious to my mother. The dress for Sophia was special consideration for a grandchild hurt by divorce." These explanatory excuses only drew more criticism. Particularly, the phrase, "as my own grandchild," was criticized as revealing her discriminatory nature. Her position in the church rapidly deteriorated. During Sunday services, the seats around Barbara remained empty. Women's group members avoided eye contact with her. She was quietly removed from the Christmas Bazaar committee. A week later, Barbara requested a meeting with the church pastor. Perhaps it was her attempt at confession. However, even there, she couldn't acknowledge her fundamental mistakes. "I did the right thing. Blood ties are important, after all." The pastor sighed deeply before responding. "Barbara, you've lost sight of what love truly means. In God's eyes, blood ties don't matter. All children deserve to be loved equally." That night, Barbara cried for the first time. However, These weren't tears of remorse for her mistakes, but tears of fear and anger at seeing her position crumble. She desperately made phone calls to her son Michael, daughter Caitlin, relatives, church friends. But no one would listen to her side of the story. Meanwhile, support for Linda and Amy continued to grow. Church members invited them to meals and gave Christmas presents. The PTA president organized special classes on preventing discrimination. Amy's classmates' parents also offered kind words. About 2 weeks after the post, Barbara disappeared from church. Rumors said she was staying with her sister in Minneapolis. Thick curtains remained drawn at her mansion in Summit Hill. This incident left a lasting impact on the community. A support group for adoptive families was established, and the church began giving sermons on true family love. Many people recognized anew the importance of confronting discrimination and prejudice. Amy's emotional wounds didn't heal easily. However, supported by understanding and support from those around her, she gradually regained her smile. Linda prayed with her daughter every night. "Lord, what happened to us surely had meaning." It opened many people's hearts and made them think about true love. Michael spent all night in his home office, staring at his computer screen. He read through hundreds of comments on his wife's social media post one by one. While many were filled with anger and sympathy, what struck him most was a comment from an old church friend. "Michael, you were always a kind boy. Remember what we learned together in Sunday school. Protecting those you love is a mission given by God." By sunrise, he had made his decision. He had caused Linda, who worked at Regions Hospital, grief many times. He had repeatedly hurt Amy's pure heart. And above all, he had abandoned his most important duty as a husband and father to protect his family. On his way to his parents' house, he stopped at the church. In the empty sanctuary, he prayed for a long time. The morning sun streaming through the stained glass seemed to shine in support of his resolve. When he arrived at Barbara and George's house, Caitlin was already there. She too looked like she had spent a sleepless night. "Mom, Dad. We need to talk." In the living room, gathered before his family, Michael began speaking quietly but firmly. "I've been a coward. I turned a blind eye to actions that hurt my wife and daughter, and sometimes even went along with them. But that ends now." Barbara tried to interrupt her son's words, but George stopped her. Perhaps the old gentleman was finally feeling his own responsibility for silently condoning his wife's behavior. "Amy is my daughter. Blood ties don't matter. She's precious family who came to us through God's guidance." At that moment, Caitlin stood up. "I have something to say too. Actually, I've always been uncomfortable with the excessive gifts for Sophia. I'm grateful for the support after my divorce. But using that to discriminate against Amy is absolutely unacceptable." Barbara's face turned pale. "Even you." "I haven't done anything wrong. It's natural to cherish blood relatives." Just then, the doorbell rang. It was the church elders. Concerned about the gravity of the situation, they had come to mediate. One elder, Thomas Wilson, was also George's friend of 40 years. "Barbara, we've known each other for many years. I've always trusted your good judgment. However, this matter cannot be overlooked." The women's group president also appeared. She pulled out an envelope. Inside were testimonies about Barbara's past behavior, discriminatory remarks toward adoptive families, prejudiced attitudes in church activities, actions that caused division in the community. Everything was meticulously documented. These are testimonies collected over the past 5 years. We've been watching, hoping you would change. But Barbara collapsed into a chair. For the first time, her expression showed fear of her own actions. However, it wasn't true remorse, but rather anxiety about losing her social status. I. As Barbara stumbled over her words, George spoke harshly to her for the first time in their 40-year marriage. "Barbara, we were wrong. Especially me, as a husband who couldn't stop your behavior, I bear great responsibility. But we can still change now. Let's make amends with our remaining years." Those words changed the atmosphere in the room. George's resolve, after years of silence under Barbara's influence, encouraged the other family members. Caitlin spoke through tears. "Mom, I was wrong too. I allowed Sophia to become a tool for your affection. This can't be good for my daughter." Michael stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the midwinter sun was encouraging the snow to melt. "Everything changes from today. Financial support to our parents will be suspended for now. Instead, I propose counseling. We'll need professional help to heal this family's wounds." Barbara shook her head violently. "Counseling? I don't need it. I've only done what's right." At that moment, Sophia came downstairs. In response to her grandmother's domineering attitude, the girl said in a small voice, "Grandma, Amy is my friend. Why are you being mean?" That innocent question completely shattered Barbara's defenses. Perhaps she finally saw herself objectively through her granddaughter's eyes. She covered her face with both hands and began sobbing loudly. The elders quietly stood up. "We will continue praying for this family's healing. But it will take time." Michael turned to his father and said, "I'll arrange for you to move. You'll need to live elsewhere for a while. I've already arranged to borrow Aunt's house in Minneapolis." George nodded silently. In the old gentleman's eyes, alongside deep sadness, there was a light of new resolve. That evening, Michael returned home. While embracing Linda and Amy, he apologized for a long time. "I promise to protect you from now on. Family division is never desirable. However, sometimes it becomes a necessary step toward a new beginning. The path to true love and forgiveness is never smooth." Still, this family had taken their first step. Christmas, 1 year later. In their new home in the St. Paul's suburbs, Linda was cooking turkey. Through the kitchen window, she could see Amy and Sophia playing in the yard. The girls were rolling snowballs, trying to make a new snowman. "Mom, Grandpa's here." At Amy's call, Linda turned to see George's car pulling up to the front door. The old gentleman had regained much of his peaceful demeanor over the past year. Weekly counseling and quiet life in Minneapolis had changed him. The paper bag he offered with "Merry Christmas" contained 2 hand-knitted scarves. Barbara knitted them. She still doesn't have the courage to meet in person, but... Linda nodded silently. Her mother-in-law's change had been gradual. She had begun volunteering at a nursing home, and through encountering various family forms there, she had slowly opened her heart. Michael came out of his study and embraced his father. He too had changed greatly over the year. His resolve to protect his family had positively influenced his work. As a hospital administrator, he had begun working to create a more equitable workplace environment. "Dad, please tell Barbara we're ready to meet whenever she is." George's eyes moistened at Linda's words. Changes continued at St. Paul's Cathedral too. Regular study groups on diverse family forms were held, and a support group for adoptive families was established. Last year's Christmas incident had brought change to many people's hearts. The church women's group established new rules for Christmas gift exchanges. Under the principle of equal treatment for all children, gift price ranges were standardized, and discriminatory actions were strictly prohibited. Caitlin had found new hope in her post-divorce life. Free from her mother's control, she had begun building her own career. Sophia too was growing up in a healthier environment. "Hey Amy, want to join the choir with me for Sunday school?" Amy nodded happily at Sophia's invitation. The two had become as close as real sisters. Barbara hadn't returned home yet. She was spending quiet days at a facility in Minneapolis. However, letters from her had started arriving. Beginning with formal apologies, they gradually began to reveal her true feelings. "I was wrong. Now I understand there are things more important than blood ties." Those words weren't false. In her old age and solitude, she had finally begun to understand the meaning of true love. In the community too, this incident became a major turning point. Awareness of discrimination and prejudice increased, and more inclusive community building progressed. The residents of Summit Hill District set, creating a community that embraces diversity, as their new goal. The family gathered around the Christmas dinner table: George, Michael, Linda, Amy, Caitlin, and Sophia. Barbara's knitted scarves lay on the table. "Let us say grace." At Michael's voice, everyone closed their eyes. "Lord, we thank you for this year's trials and lessons. You have taught us the true meaning of family. That it's not blood ties, but love that binds a family together." Amy squeezed her mother's hand. That small hand held genuine warmth. Outside the window, new snow had begun to fall. But this year's snow looked different from last year's. It sparkled with hope, like a symbol of new beginnings. This family's story remained in many people's hearts. It taught that love comes in many forms, and that true bonds aren't necessarily just about blood relations. While it takes time to heal wounded hearts, with forgiveness and understanding, a path will surely open.